team's final group project, and it's from both of our prime programs with the same client. So the UX design work that Allison and Ed's team did will really kind of like walk you through the discovery research, the interaction modeling, and they did to land on their kind of final deliverable, which is this interactive prototype of the web application, which you'll be seeing in just a couple minutes. And then the
Okay, perfect. But I won't get too much into the details. All right, so up on the top here, you can see we've created this conversation space, a debate space for policy issues. So you come in and there's sort of an introduction to what's going to be discussed. And then I just want to draw your eye to this common ground area. As we said earlier with Citizens League, really the mission is to, like, the idea that we have to all work together to promote democracy for the common good of everyone. So before we get into talking about an issue, this common ground is going to present what we do agree on. Then we come to the conversation contributors. There's a short bio and photograph next to each of those. All right, and then we will move into the conversation or debate arena, if you will. Right here, you can see we have this sort of tabbed system, and you can toggle between the different participants in the conversation. We did do some future development plans to support like multiple voices, up to 3 and 4 contributors. Rarely policy issues are just one side or the other. But this prototype has 2 contributors. All right, so over here on the left side of our first contributor's argument. And as you hover, you get a preview of this conversation that happens with each one of these premises. So I'm going to jump into one here. As you click on it, it's going to anchor this conversation here. And so what we have is sort of this inline back and forth between the 2 participants discussing an issue. And then each point has these little evidence drawers to support a point they may be making. The interesting thing about these evidence drawers is that it's also very evident if it isn't filled or if there's no evidence to support a claim or point that a contributor is trying to make. And then also sort of this center back and forth conversation. It has an infinite scale. We can scroll and scroll and keep the conversation going on forever if we need to.
So as you tell us, like, can you explain what that is?
So Acture is sort of an interactive prototyping tool. Often we'll create like a flat wireframe, which is kind of tells the layout of where things are going to be. And then once we kind of had these flat designs, we brought it into Acture, and we essentially, this isn't coded, but it looks like it could be. It looks like it's a live website. And that allows us to, put it in front of our users to test it, to try it, to see what is working and isn't working. So yeah, Acture is a really neat program.
If I could ask you actually a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious what it looks like to make action, how are you making the interactive aspects of Acture work if it's not coded? Because that was something that I was definitely wondering watching your presentation too.
Oh, and Allison, I think I muted you just because there's some echoing. So if you can unmute yourself when you talk, sorry about that. I can do it too.
The very first panel that you see here, the policy bytes format, just gives a nice outline and kind of a purpose statement of the site itself. And then right below that, you'll see a current conversation section. This is what our client referred to as the topic page or the current conversation that he wants highlighted that is currently being discussed. he would have done all the research beforehand. So he would have found 2 contributors for this given topic of how should tips be treated in St. Paul restaurants, and he'll research them themselves, their background, and sum up a nice bio about each of them, as you can see here. And once you click on this current conversation, you'll see it in more detail, which I will do in just a second. Below that, there is an archive section, and this is just past topics that have been discussed that were once the current conversation. And if you click on any of these as well, you will be able to see them, the contributors, and the discussion that they contributed. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the current conversation. Once you do, you're taken to the topic page. Right at the top, you'll see which topic is being discussed. And below that, again, just a nice summary, a nice background of the current topic. Below that, you'll see the common ground that Ed was just talking about. Again, this is all Matt. He has done all this research and pulled this together. And so the common ground here is what these 2 contributors were able to agree upon. Below that, you'll see the contributors themselves. It's a repeat of what you saw on the landing page. You see their bios. And one important thing, and again, just to emphasize the hard work that Matt puts in, he doesn't just find some random people. He does his research and does find people that are qualified to talk about this given topic. So if you look at Eli, he was a restaurant worker, and then Jennifer has been in the industry for 17 years. So he really does a good job in doing his research and getting qualified candidates. Now, here's what Allison was highlighting, the conversation section that happens between these contributors. And first thing, you can switch between either. This is Eli's proposal and then his key claims. You can click on Jennifer and you'll see hers as well. They're all right here. And then, again, going back to what Allison showed us, when you take your mouse and hover over each key claim, you'll be able to see the conversation and the response of the other contributor. We color-coded each contributor so that you could see who was saying what. So Eli has this kind of greenish-blue outline, and then Jennifer, she has kind of this yellowish-brown outline. So you know who is saying what when you highlight over these key claims in this conversation window.
Justin, if I can just interrupt you for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to point out that those colors came from the UX designers. So you guys intentionally picked colors that were earth tones and as neutral as possible. And you created a style guide for us, including the rounded corners on all of these panels. Like all that stuff is their design, and we just implemented it like to the, decimal place on the color. Like it's just exactly what they picked. So I just wanted to point that out. Like that was all them.
Yep, and that was a huge help, by the way. You have no idea how much time that saved us to already have a wireframe. I mean, Atticus and I can both attest, our whole group can, just how much time that saved us for not having to whip up a wireframe, and you guys just did a good job with that. So we really appreciate your hard work. It made our lives easier for sure. So you can go ahead and click on one of these key claims. Once you do, the conversation here remains in this conversation box. And what Allison was saying, you can, if the conversation really wanted to, go on forever, and you can infinitely scroll here. And then once you click on any of these claims here, there is a section where the contributor has a spot to back up their claim with some evidence that you can see there as well. One really cool thing that we're also able to implement is a comment section. And you can see that below here in the, below the conversation that these contributors were having. One thing that was really important to Matt was for users, in order for them to participate, they would have to sign in with Facebook. And one of our coworkers, David, did an excellent job in tackling that beast. It was really hard, but he did it. And so all you have to do is click on the sign in with Facebook. It'll take you to the Facebook login page. You would log in, and then it takes you right back here to this comment section where you could go ahead and add your any comment that you would like. And we can just use Eli's proposal here for example. So you just click on this comment button right here, and once you've signed in with Facebook, it'll drop you right down to this conversation section with whatever you are commenting on right here, so you know, so the user is reminded which part they're commenting on, and then you can just submit your comment right below that. A couple other things that you can do as well as the user. You can either like a key claim, supporting evidence, proposal, whatever, and you can also love a key claim. One thing that Matt emphasized as well is community involvement. He wanted the users to be able to interact with the conversation, and so one way that he thought about doing that was to have this love button, and what happens when you click on it, the user receives a message, it appears as a modal, and it will say, would you like to receive more information about this topic? And then they can click either yes or no. If they click yes, then Matt receives an email saying that so-and-so user would like to know more information about this topic and would like to become more involved. So that was a really fun
really cool
feature that we were able to implement. Yeah, again, that was definitely one of Matt's goals, was to try to think of ways to have more community involvement from the user side. So yeah, that pretty much sums up the user client side. Atticus, can you think of anything else that I missed? Or?
Truly, the most, we were testing like micro interactions, sort of moments, maybe like one piece of evidence or one premise, and just seeing what that meant to someone that hadn't been, just like how someone that wasn't involved in the process would understand how that works.
Cool.
These are just examples of that process.
Got it. And then you mentioned Allison, and I did mute you, and I'll unmute.
Another thing that came in.
Gotcha. And then you kind of mentioned
of a website into little tiny components, and our app, which we actually didn't show. And this is something that Ed and Allison didn't have anything to do so that the rest of it would work. But if you want to create a new topic, we enter this page. And so you can see that there's this general information for each topic, which is pretty common, and that's not too hard to store. But once we get into these other sections where we have these key claims, and understanding that these key claims, we don't know how many of them there are going to be. And we don't know how many of the sub key claims there are going to be. So figuring out how to build their website in such a way that it actually made sense was almost a bigger undertaking than like designing how it looks and works, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's kind of amazing to kind of get behind the scenes and like something that seems, because of all the
process, like front end and back end as well. So it was a great experience for sure.
What was like, so you guys are kind of representing a little bit bigger team, like not a huge team, but there's at least two others on your.
And then what do we need to get done today?
That's, Atticus, what you're alluding to, like all the lines of code, and then all of the what is it called when you kind of launch that new version then?
So you take off a branch and you work on your own little branch, and then you push it to another place.
All that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, pushing it. Yeah, pushing the. That I was looking for. Thank you.
One more thing with that we all learned, which was, I know, really helpful for me, is it's really important that we understand who is working on what, which is why we have those, why we assign tasks at the beginning, because
it's like, did you guys run into any technological challenges? It seems like you're speaking from experience on this, what you're just talking about learning, maybe the hard way, which is fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, any other kind of big challenges you ran into?
There was one point where it was like 4 days before I had to present, and we realized, hey, the crux of our app is not working. Why is this? Like when we would kind of, from Matt's point of view, when he would like, oh no, we thought this was working, but it's not, and it's 4 days away, you know? So we basically just did a all hands on deck type of thing where it's like, drop what you're doing, we got to figure this out. And actually, we did get it, which is cool, and it was really neat actually to, you know, maybe not in the moment, but to see like we were all working on this
for the whole.
Enough time coding to know that you like it, because it's a pretty specific skill set and it's like a pretty specific mindset, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it totally is. It made the decision to do it. I was waiting tables, and I'm never going to wait another table in my life. So feel really good about that.
Awesome.
Your career
so we can take kind of a peek behind the scenes of this application. And I just really hope that kind of this gave you guys a feel for what you guys could be creating, even if you start kind of with zero coding or design experience. But like Ed said, you have kind of that vision Friday at midnight on digitalacademy.io. So that wraps